See me? Hear me?
How you doing? How are you?
I'm good. I'm so sorry about Bruno, dude. And I hate to start like that, but I'm so sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, it's I'm still pretty messed up by it. I had the dog for 20 years, and it's just weird not having him here. He was like my buddy. I mean, but he really went kind of downhill. I mean, about a year and a half ago, he lost his sight. Well, first he lost his hearing, then he got these bad cataracts. He went blind. But if you know anything about dogs, they have a nose, sense of smell. It's 100,000 times more sensitive than humans. So, strangely enough, losing sight, and people don't understand this about dogs, losing the senses of sight and hearing is not quite as bad in dogs as is in humans. They can get around surprisingly well. And I've noticed that with cats also. I've seen blind cats do the same thing. But the point is that, he's been in the hospital a couple of months back. He had a kidney infection. It was successfully treated. I thought I was going to lose him then because he was old. He was a little tiny guy. I didn't know whether he'd make it, but he made it, and he just bounced back. It was amazing. I mean, it's almost like the hands of time went back. He was walking good, even though he has arthritis. Another thing that comes with age, he had arthritis in the spine and legs. I gave medication for that. He didn't. He used to love to walk. He'd walk for miles if you let him. This guy would walk across country if you let him. He was very fast when I first got him. As he got older, he walked slower and slower, and after a while, he didn't want to walk long distances. But towards the end, he hardly wanted to walk at all. Just wanted to go out, do his thing, and come right back in. But then what happened was he got another kidney infection for some reason, and apparently, from what I could put together, he had what they call pyelonephritis, and it's a kidney. It's a condition where, let's say, E. coli organisms, bacteria, they go from the up the ureters into the kidneys, and they cause a kidney infection. It's much more common in women because they have a much more a shorter urethra than men.
Mm.
Type of bladder and or kidney infection. So what happened was, they were treating him, and I'll be honest with you, I've had several dogs, and I had a hamster and a cat, and I've noticed a pattern. I don't know if you've had animals, you might notice this yourself, but any animal, no matter what the species, if it stops eating and drinking,
Yeah.
it's on the way out. The death is imminent. 4 days before, he wasn't eating very good. I was giving him a special dog food. And then after a while, he didn't want to eat the dog food. I was actually giving him human baby food, liquid form. I was shooting in his mouth with a little bottle. And after, let's say, the last 4 days, he refused to eat. And then he was still drinking up until 2 days. Then 2 days, he would stop drinking water and stopped eating. And I knew that he was on the way out. And his weight went down. Most of the years I had him, his weight varied between 12 and 14 pounds. Towards the end, he went all the way down to 7 pounds. Right before he died, he was under 7 pounds. He was tiny. I mean, he was really. I tried to. I got a hold of some Pedialyte to give him some electrolytes. I had a little dropper. I was shooting the liquid in his mouth. I was also giving him IV fluids. But what happened was, the Sunday that he died, he was doing very badly. So I called the vet, and she said, "Bring him in. I'll take a look at him." As I drove over there, he had a convulsion in the car. As soon as the car stopped, the convulsion stopped. So I don't know whether it was the movement of the car that set it off. I don't know. I went in there. She put a stethoscope to him. She said he's having a little bit of heart rhythm disturbances, and she said, he's dying. She says to me, he says, "If you want, we could put him to sleep right now." I said, "No." I said, "Because I can't handle that. I literally would not be able to drive my car. I'm not ready for that." Between me and you, I've had five, I think 4 or 5 other dogs. Thank God all of them died naturally. I never had to give him, put him to sleep. And don't get me wrong, let me quickly add, if you have an animal that's suffering and obviously suffering, I'm not against, euthanasia, but none of my dogs suffered. In fact, my dog Chip, who died 2 or 3 years ago, he had diffuse cancer throughout his body. He was still eating and drinking and walking up to the day he died. No signs of any problem. But the only sign was the day he died. I usually walked him and Bruno together. I said, "Chip, we're going to go for the walk." He didn't want to go for a walk. I walked Bruno. I came back 20 minutes later. Chip was dead. He died on his own. Same thing with Bruno. What happened was later that night on the Sunday, I'm sitting here and I heard a noise. I look over at Bruno. He has a little bed over here, and he's like having a severe convulsion. I mean, scary. I mean, I almost screamed. I couldn't believe it. He looked like he was going in the air. It was, I mean, severe convulsion. And then I tried to calm down. I rubbed his back and his face, held his head in his hand, and I could see his breathing was getting more and more shallow. And then he died about a minute later. He just died right there on the spot. And I was curious. I called the vet and I said, what do you think happened there with this massive convulsion? Did that kill him? Did that give him a heart attack? She says it's possible. She said, but you have to understand, the nephrons, the structures of the kidneys, they get fewer and fewer as both humans and dogs age. He had almost no kidney function left. I said, well, there's something in humans called what's it called? Multi-organ failure, where if you go into kidney failure, your liver, your heart, it's like a whole building all falling down. You know what I mean? But liver or the kidney could set it off where your heart goes right at, it's like they call again multi-organ failure. I said, is that plausible to you? She says yes. So and to sum it all up, I think the immediate cause of death of Bruno was kidney failure, which led to that multi-organ failure that actually was killed him that night. So he was 23 years old, and he was a good little guy. I mean, I'll be honest with you, like many dogs, he slept like 95% of the time. But there was something about him being here, just being in the room with me, gave me a lot of comfort because I live by myself. There's nobody here. I'm always either researching, writing. It's a very lonely lifestyle, and having this little companion made a huge difference. So I'm really missing him right now, to tell you the truth. I just picked up his ashes the other day. They're sitting on his bed right now. I haven't been able to actually look at him. I'm just waiting to where my mind is a little bit ready for it.
I
So
mean,
that's
kind of a younger version of you. I got two cats. They keep me sane.
yeah,
We literally play all the time. Like we like throw cards in a hat and they
yeah,
catch them in the air and stuff like that.
yeah,
But they keep me happy. I completely understand. I've had animals my whole life.
yeah, yeah,
But anyways, happier notes. I'm glad we could talk about that. Though I was really upset about that as well. Actually,
yeah.
Bruno's been on the podcast with us. I think at least 14 times.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast. He's been in my videos. As a matter of fact, normally, a lot of people they go on Facebook and they announce that their cat or their dog died. That's not usually my style. I kind of keep that stuff to myself. But Bruno actually had a fan club on my videos. I would put him in a video, and if he wasn't in the next video, I'd get 10 comments. Where's Bruno? Where's Bruno? A lot. I mean, to this day, people still write on the videos, where's Bruno? So he had a kind of a people knew about him. So I felt I had to put something, and I posted a little thing on a picture of me with him, and I wrote what happened to him on Facebook. But normally I don't do that, but I did it because a lot of people knew about him.
I try to keep my personal life private. So it's different than what we normally do.
Yeah,
You don't want to always keep it associated, but I completely understand. I mean, it was. I mean, when I got the email from you, I was heartbroken. Honestly, it really screwed up my morning a little bit. I'm so sorry to hear that.
yeah, I appreciate that.
But as you said, I mean, he had quite a fan club.
Yeah. Everyone keeps telling me that, don't feel sad. He's in a better place and he's happy and he's running around and he's not blind or deaf anymore. He's like they say that that happens to humans too. Like when they go old, they revert back to their youthful. All I can tell you is I really, as a kind of a science-based person, I have to tell you that I it's hard for me to believe that stuff. And that goes, and again, if you're a religious, I'm not going to call you stupid or anything like that, but my mind is so after
I'm right
50,
there with you. Don't worry, I'm right there with you.
you know what I mean? Okay, after 50 years of writing and studying science, my mind is very evidence-based. So in other words, religion, for example, is based on faith. It's a belief in something that there's literally no evidence for, but it's faith. People pray to God when they say, and my point I'm trying to make is, I really hope that's real. Don't get me wrong.
It'd be
I,
great if it was. Yeah, it'd be
I,
great if it was.
I hope there is a God. I mean, most of my thinking is that it's not, there isn't, but I really, there's a
Zero
part,
evidence
you know what I'm
whatsoever.
saying?
Yeah,
There's a part of me that hopes there is. And more importantly, there's a huge part of me that hopes that these stories about Bruno running free and the rest of my dogs all healthy and happy, and my people that I loved, are all that are gone. I, down to my soul, I wish that's true. But again, it's to me, it's like believing in the tooth fairy, or Santa Claus. It's a nice thought, but I can't totally believe it. They're trying to make me feel good. And again, I wish it was true. I really do, honestly do. But it's a kind of like a conflict in my mind. You know what I mean? The
Right,
science.
that human nature we have, though, that duality we have to struggle with. I mean,
Yeah.
my take, I suppose, is, I mean, you've probably dealt with more deaths than myself, but I've had to deal with quite a few painful deaths.
Mhm.
And I'm the same way. I was brought up religious, and from the very beginning, I questioned it. And the more I actually read the Bible, the more I really questioned it. And then I started learning about logical fallacies and,
Yeah.
science stuff. But my take on the matter has always been, you know, well, you've seen people die. When you see somebody die, it's very clear that the person, the thing that was the person is gone. They've left. That's
Right.
very clear. Now, I don't believe or have evidence for reincarnation. I would like to believe in that. But I
Hmm.
feel even if that was the case, just looking at the science, it's not like your consciousness is surviving. It's not like the most beautiful thing I could say is your energy is going to be renewed and reused in such a way that is a natural part of the lifestyle cycle. Sorry, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best I can say. I don't have any reason to this. Again, I hate to get into the religious stuff. It's kind of easier with you because you're on the same page with me. But I
Yeah.
mean, it just there's no evidence for anything, any form of afterlife. Hopefully, we can return our energy to the earth, and we could nurture it the same way that we were born and such. But other than that,
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I've never been a religious guy, and even when I was a kid, I was never religious. It just honestly, it wasn't any particular philosophy. It frankly bored me. I just wasn't into it, But as I aged, the older I got, when I saw how religions, not any particular religion, but the way religion in general adversely affects the world, I began to take a very negative view towards religion. If you think about it, and I almost hate to say this, but knowing that you're not, I wouldn't say this to you if you were a super religious guy. I wouldn't want to offend you,
walk
but
around people. Yeah.
my point is that I've come to realize a large majority of problems in the world are due to two things. One is stupidity and ignorance is the main thing. Stupidity and ignorance is what causes every major problem can be traced back to that. This the second thing, and again, I'm sorry to say this, but
Religion kind of
it,
goes in that category, though. I think. I mean,
right. Yeah, well, the second thing is that it's religion. I mean, think about it. I mean, the Muslim attacks and this and that, and Christian fundamentalists, and they want to, get rid of women's rights. It goes on. It's all based back to false. And you know what the funny thing is? This is what really gets me. Most of this crap is made up as they go along. It's not in their biblical text. It's not in the Bible. And there's nothing in the Bible that says that trans LBGQT should have no right. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in the Muslim Bible that says that anyone who's not a Muslim should be killed. This is made up by people, and that is obscene to me. In other words, what I'm trying to say is these are phony religious zealots. They're not true religious people. The true religious people do follow some of the tenets of the Bible, which, by the way, I consider a book of fiction, but that's another story.
I
But
mean, it clearly is. I mean, now it does have some pretty cool historical references. I mean, if
yeah,
you get into some cool stuff, Graham Hancock really does make some pretty cool
yeah,
references in there. But those are historical. That's a bit different, and of course they're going to
yeah,
be sewn in there. But the
yeah.
fact that you would need religion to tell you what is moral is ridiculous. Our morality has advanced in spite of religion.
Right,
The fact that you even have the religion that you have is an accident of where you were born in the first place. I mean,
very true.
we could keep going, but I mean, it's just again, it's just ignorance and stupidity. Religion for a long time was a really good way to control all of that.
Well,
But
yeah, well, no, just to underscore what you're saying, my philosophy about religion, I think I might even mention it to you in a past video. My philosophy about religion in general for many years, up until fairly recently, was that it's a good thing, because if people follow the tenets again of the Bible, the Ten Commandments, they'll be forced on a certain moral road, an ethical road, where they won't, if they really are truly following the religion, where they won't. But I realized, and more recently, that's bullshit. In other words, some of these people that call themselves Christian fundamentalists, all these people, they will hurt other people. They're not father. They are not moral, and they're not ethical. So
Well,
they're just full of shit. In other words,
again, I would say just on principle, anything that they say that they believe based on the Bible, the first thing that they're going to have to do is literally to start off with a laundry list of apologies for everything that the faith has already currently done. And then they're going to have to tell you that they understand that the Bible itself is mostly fake and they're
yeah.
independent, picking their morals from it. And then
Mm-hmm.
they're finally going to have to tell you the only real reason that they believe in religion is because they're worried about being punished by the big daddy in the sky.
Exactly.
That is
That's
not a good reason to be a moral person. I don't need that to be a moral person. I just
that is the reason. That is the reason
I
why.
know,
They're,
that's why they invented hell. It's ridiculous. And
yeah.
what is heaven? There is no concept of heaven, but there's very detailed concepts of hell.
Yeah. Now think about it. Think about it. I mean, think about it. I mean, they're saying that to live a good life. I'm talking about these ultra religious people. You have to follow the teachings of the Bible. Exactly. Now, if
They
you did
cherry
that,
pick.
wait a minute. I'm sure you're aware there are certain passages in their Bible that are actually homicidal. For example, there's
Yep.
something about where if I don't know the exact passage, if your wife looks at another man, she should be taken out and stoned to death. Now,
Yeah.
think about it. If they follow that, think about it. That means any guy who suspects
Dead wives
wife,
around here.
I mean, seriously, any guy who suspected his wife of cheating should take her out in the street, get a bunch of people, and stone her to death. Now, come on, you can't follow. If you're going to follow the Bible, you got to follow it exactly, or not at all. Come on, you
Not,
know?
I mean, what about the? I mean, we don't want to get into this rabbit hole. We're going to stop after this. But I mean, if you take the Bible literally, there's so many things wrong with it. What about God literally came down and told this guy, "Prove your love to me by killing your son."
Killing your
I
son,
don't
right?
care if I heard voices in my head saying to do that. I'd go get help and tell that voice to go fuck itself.
Oh yeah,
So crazy that yeah, I love God, so I kill my son. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude?
and also think about this. They all talk about how God is loving. He's loving, right? And yet in this next sentence, they'll say that if you don't worship God, you will go to hell.
Yeah.
Now, would a loving God send a person to hell? I have friends of mine who are, what do they call those
What
people
about
when
all
they,
the people who don't
wait,
believe in him and don't know who he
yeah,
exists?
think about all the other, yeah.
Go to hell
I,
too.
I had a friend of mine years ago. He became what they call a born again Christian, and he always used to say to me, Jerry, he says, you got to believe in Jesus, otherwise you're going to go straight to hell. He says, I'm trying to save your soul. He used to say this to me, right? I said to him, look, I said, first of all, I said, if there is truly a all-knowing God, he will judge you by your acts and by what you do in life. If you're a good person, you help people, you don't hurt anyone, and I said, you're not gonna go to hell simply because you didn't worship him. That would not be a good God.
Mhm.
So,
And
but
besides that, let's just say I die and there is a God, okay, and I'm standing in front of him.
yeah,
And he's gonna say to me, well, you didn't believe in me. And I'm gonna say, yeah, you didn't give me any goddamn evidence.
there
Is
you
that
go.
is that my fault? And
Yeah,
I have some more questions for you. How about all of the babies that you murder every year?
there you go. Right.
How I'm gonna stop. I could keep going. But let's get to the podcast. Let's get the podcast. So
Okay, yeah, we can go on and on with. Well, let's just sum it up by saying I'm going to give you a flat out statement that would make a lot of people hate my guts.
oh,
I
me
think
too.
I think religion is complete fucking horseshit.
Most of it.
But listen, a quick statement behind that is, if religion makes you feel good and helps you feel better about yourself, more power to you. But don't fucking proselytize it, and don't try and force it on me. Don't try and force it down my throat if I'm not interested. That's all I ask.
Exactly, because you do not see atheists walking around knocking on Christians' doors, explaining evidence, and
Yeah,
we see that
yeah,
happen. So just leave us alone. We leave you
yeah.
alone. Leave us alone.
That's it.
We
There you
understand. As Christopher Hitchens said, you guys have all of your toys and you like your toys and you can play with your toys at home and you can invite over your friends who like to play with make-believe toys as well. But
go.
I'm a grown up and I don't like these toys and I don't want them near me, nor my children, nor my
Right,
friends and family.
right. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. I'm Coach Castle, and I'm here to educate you in the latest science regarding biomechanics, biochemistry, respiratory health, nutrition, and much more. Please remember to subscribe to this channel and like these videos if you find this content helpful. But now, let's go ahead and get into the video.
But anyway, so what I wanted to chat about today was artificial sweeteners, and if we
Okay.
get to it, blood pressure. Now, because this is the myth
Oh,
bust,
what was it? What was the second one? I didn't hear it.
blood pressure.
Okay, blood pressure. Go ahead.
So, well, I mean, again, you probably know more about this than I do, but long story short, I have been under the assumption for a long time that artificial sweeteners were very, very bad. You should stay away from them.
Hmm.
Then, as always, I did a whole bunch of research, and I came to the conclusion that there's quite a few that actually have no harmful effects whatsoever. They're perfectly fine with.
Right.
Then I'm now looking at new data, and now I'm once again taking it back. But again, this is kind of how science goes. There's nothing new
Yeah.
about it. So I really wanted to get your opinion on it. So that's the artificial sweetener ones,
Right.
how the effects of your health are, specifically the microbiome and
Right.
insulin sensitivity, specifically those two things.
Okay.
And then blood pressure. This is something I'm recently learning about myself, but I thought it'd be fun for Mythbusters as well. Having high blood pressure is bad. This is
Mm.
kind of something I thought until recently myself,
Very
and
good.
looking into it. So, what did that sound like for you? Sound good?
Sounds good.
Which one you want to start with?
Let's start with the artificial sweeteners. So, but Castle, to really get into discussion of sweeteners, you have to divide it into three categories: natural sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners, and artificial sweeteners. Now, most of the problems that people talk about are related to artificial sweeteners. For example, well, there's different examples. I'll give you a couple of quick examples that just to give you an idea. Years ago, there was a sweetener called cyclamate. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So, see, we're going way back to the 70s. I wouldn't expect you to know this one. Cyclamate was used in the United States in a lot of these, let's say, diet cokes. They had a low calorie beverage called TAB. I think it was sold by Coca-Cola. It used cyclamate as its main sweetener. A lot of people were drinking, cyclamate sweetened beverages. Okay, then they came out with a study where they found that cyclamate causes cancer in mice. Now, it was a knee-jerk reaction. As soon as that study came out, the FDA, I believe it was, immediately banned cyclamate from all American products. Now, cyclamate also was used in Canada. Canada did not ban cyclamate. Why? Because the Canadians, whatever it is, a version of the FDA, looked at these studies and they found that, first of all, there's two things. Rodents get cancer. I don't know if you know this, much easier than humans, much easier. I mean, they can get in a snap of a finger. That's the first thing. The second thing, this is hilarious. The amount of cyclamate they gave to the rodents that cause cancer would be equivalent of drinking about 90 to 100 cans of diet soda a day, and the fizz would kill you before the cyclamate with all that carbonation and benzoic gas, all the other rest of the stuff in there. And in the case of cola, phosphoric acid, which is very bad. It's too much phosphorus, very bad for your kidneys. But the point being that when the Canadians did studies of the amount of cyclamate that would, let's say, be normally ingested by humans in the course of a day, whether from food or sweetened beverages like diet soda, they found no effect. And they did this in rodents. They gave the amount that a human would take in the course of a day to rodents, zero effect, no cancer whatsoever, not even the beginning of cancer. Here's the point: cyclamate was banned. It was a knee-jerk reaction. It should never have been banned in the first place. And to this day, it's still not used, even though there's nothing wrong with it.
They do that with a lot of things, knee-jerk reaction.
Right. Another artificial sweetener, probably one of the most famous, is saccharin. Now, saccharin, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I think it's like 600 times sweeter than sugar.
Spot on.
Again, they came out with a rodent study, a couple of them, that showed that saccharin causes cancer in the rodents. So again, they removed saccharin from beverages and foods and all that. Then they did follow-up studies with humans, and there was no mechanism, no way of saccharin causing cancer in humans. So you know what I'm saying? So in other words, and let's take still a third one, which is aspartame, which is one of the more controversial. I believe it's 200 times sweeter than sucrose table sugar. And now, as you know, aspartame, what is aspartame? It's two amino acids bonded together, phenylalanine and aspartic acid. It also has a little bit of what they call methanol, which is also known as wood alcohol. Wood alcohol is toxic. There's no question about it. But people don't understand wood methanol is found naturally in many healthy foods like fruits and fruit juice. One glass of let's say orange juice has more methanol than about 50 packets of aspartame. But you see,
That's used in the fermentation process too, right? Just on the side note, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken.
Well, the problem with methanol is that it breaks down in the body into formaldehyde. Formaldehyde, as you might have heard of, is embalming fluid. That's what they
I
put.
didn't know that actually. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, methanol breaks down into formaldehyde, right? And of course, again, formaldehyde is what they embalm human corpses. But formaldehyde is a carcinogen, right? The problem is that the amount of let's say aspartame with the amount of let's say methanol in there that you'd have to take would be almost impossible for a human to eat. So, but now what you say to me? Well, what happens to the methanol that is in aspartame, the small amounts? Well, it turns out the body has systems which break it down into an innocuous substance and excrete it out. It doesn't make you high like regular alcohol. Doesn't do anything. It's basically, doesn't do a thing. Now, the secondary problem with aspartame is the two amino acids that are bonded. Now, on the one hand, you could say, wait a minute, hold on a second. Aspartic acid and phenylalanine are amino acids found in protein. So if they're toxic, why wouldn't protein be toxic? Well, it turns out it's when you bond them together, they have different chemical characteristics, right? Now, it turns out phenylalanine, by the way, is a essential amino acid that's a nutritional precursor for what they call catecholamine hormones like dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. It's actually very important. Phenylalanine can be converted into tyrosine, which is the direct amino acid used to produce those brain neurotransmitters. The problem with phenylalanine, the main problem, is some people have a genetic lack of an enzyme. They're born with this, where they cannot break down phenylalanine. It's called PKU, fetal ketonuria. If you look at an envelope or a product that contains aspartame, it has a little notation. Fetal ketoniurics, please be aware that this product contains phenylalanine, blah, blah, blah. It's a warning. Now, if you have one gene for PKU, usually you could still have aspartame with no problem. If you have two genes and you take an aspartame, it can cause some problems, right?
Out of curiosity, would a seizure be something like that?
Yeah, yes, yeah,
Wow.
seizure. Yeah, you can get a seizure if you have a PK.
I had a client with that. We had to stay away from it, and that's what one
Right,
of the reasons I started doing research
right.
again.
If you have two genes for PKU and you take in even moderate amounts of aspartame, it could cause a seizure. That's very true.
Got it.
Uh, but the thing about aspartame is that uh, my favorite study. A lot of people who use products that contain aspartame, they say that they get these massive headaches when they use it. So a couple of years ago, some researchers decided to test it. They did a double-blind, placebo-controlled study where they gave one group they told one group, no, they gave one group aspartame, the other group got a placebo, right? And then they did what they call a cross study where they switched it the next week. The people that got aspartame got the placebo. Okay, it turns out that the people that claimed to get massive headaches got them when they took aspartame as expected, right? But when they took the placebo, they claimed to get the same headaches.
Were they just dehydrated, or they not?
No, it was almost like what they call it. They call that in medicine a nocebo effect.
Yeah, nocebo. So
You've
it
heard of
really is the psychosomatic effect.
right, exactly. You know
Those
what
are
a
the
you know what
opposite
a
of placebo, by the way, guys.
you know what a placebo is? A placebo is a substance that really is inert, but because you believe it's going to do something, it causes changes in the bodies where you actually get something. In fact, a lot of food supplements, popular food supplements, not creatine, that's but certain other ones, work almost entirely on the placebo effect because there's not enough of the nutrients in these supplements to do anything. But people swear they get effects, and they are. They're not lying, but it's a placebo effect. Now the nocebo effect is a little bit rarer than the placebo. The nocebo is something where if you take something and you expect it to cause problems, it will cause problems. And just like the placebo, it's real. It's a real effect, but you're causing it, not the thing.
I'm actually gonna contradict what you just said. It's actually not rarer than the placebo effect. It's actually highly correlated with any over-the-counter medicine that has any of that laundry list of symptoms. Just
Okay, that's true.
reading those symptoms, most people they do actually expect those nocebo. I mean, I just did a whole bunch of research on this particular topic. That's why I'm saying it.
Well, that's true. A good example of this antidepressant drugs, which are among the most popular to prescribe drugs in the world. Now, one of the minor side effects of people don't know of a lot of antidepressant drugs is it can cause male impotence. But the incidence of impotence with antidepressive drugs is something like 1 to 4%. But doctors have learned when they put their male patients, on these drugs, never to mention that it could possibly cause impotence, because in the past, when they tried to be complete and list all the possible side effects, about 50% of the men came back and said that they were impotent because of the drug. That's a nocebo effect.
So real
See?
quick, just while we're on a separate tangent, let's bring it back around, but in a different way here. So this has happened to you so many times. I know because it's happened to me a lot, but it's kind of, again, like I previously mentioned, how science works is you'll get information, you'll go with it set in stone for a while, and then completely get it disrupted in the
Yeah.
finding and completely switch your view. So how would you say that your views on artificial sweeteners have changed, let's say, now compared to what they had once been? In
Well,
summary.
yeah. Well, the term used for how science is constantly, possibly changing is called plasticity. And people, it has nothing to do with being made out of plastic. Plasticity
Oh,
means that,
plasticity, same thing.
yeah, plasticity means it's just subject to change. And it's true. Things that are factual today, scientifically, tomorrow could be wrong. I've made mistakes. I mean, you can't really predict a lot of times that this is going to happen. I myself have been guilty of making some mistakes. I wrote about supplements in bodybuilding magazines, such as ribose, where when I first wrote about ribose, it looked extremely promising. I mean, the studies that existed, everything made sense physiologically. I looked at the studies. I interviewed this guy who had a PhD in biochemistry, who happened to own a company that had the rights to sell ribose as a sports supplement. Anyway, I wrote an article where I predicted it. I called it the next creatine. It turns out a year later, studies came out where they gave 5 times the recommended dosage of ribose to people involved in sports and exercise, and it had no ergogenic effect at all, zero. But it doesn't mean that ribose is useless. It's still useful for people who have something called chronic fatigue syndrome. It might help them. And when it's given intravenously, it will actually increase the bioenergetics of the heart. If you have, let's say, chronic heart failure, it'll help. But I'm talking huge amounts, like 100 milligrams or 100 grams, something like that, or more given IV. But the normal suggested doses of 5 grams do absolutely nothing. But it's not my mistake because the science changed.
It evolved. Yeah.
So you're saying at the time I wrote that. Now, getting back to artificial sweeteners, I looked at a lot of the research, as you probably have. Oh, well, let's go back to what I said earlier. I classified 3 types of sweetener. Natural would be stuff like table sugar, sucrose, fructose. There's one called allulose, which is a monounsaturated, which I also wrote about. Very interesting stuff. I could talk about it if you want a little later. But anyway, those are in the natural categories. Stevia is a natural supplement. The monk fruit is another natural supplement. Then then you have that. These also fit into the category of non-nutritive sweeteners because they impart sweetness, but they don't really give you any other nutrients. They're solely good for sweetening purposes. That's it. And then, of course, then you have the artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame, and you have, of course, sucralose. Now, sucralose basically is sucrose, kind of like a bizarro form of sucrose, where it's a backhanded version, like it's like turned around. And because of that, the idea is that it'll impart sweetness, actually more than sucrose, but because it can't be digested, it doesn't, increase, it doesn't cause any hormonal effects, no insulin release, nothing like that. Unfortunately, more recently, this is probably what you were referring to, they showed that sucralose, initial animal studies showed that it can have a negative effect on what they call the intestinal microbiome, which is the population of bacteria, fungi, and other organisms that reside in the colon that have I mean, you could do a video, I'm not exaggerating, 12 hours long on the microbiome alone. I mean, I've written about.
I mean, yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I mean, we're talking about trillions of organisms. Anyway, the point is they came out with these studies. Now, I started to wonder about that. In fact, I was so concerned because I was familiar with the benefits imparted by the intestinal microbiome, and I didn't want to mess with. I mean, I do a lot of things to foster a good balance of bacteria. I eat dietary fiber. I try to avoid a lot of saturated fat and processed carbs. I do everything I can. I take probiotic.
Yeah, just real quick. So in order to do this, guys, what you're gonna want to do is have a diverse microbiome, is a healthy microbiome.
Right, that's correct.
As Jerry just said, basically in a nutshell, you want to have a large selection of healthy, fibrous foods. The gut microbiome preference is healthy fiber. And you want to
Right.
just want to keep mixing it up. Also, probiotics, prebiotics. One of my favorites is also sauerkraut, is a natural one for you guys.
That's right. That's a prebiotic. Yeah.
But you just sorry, just in a quick nutshell. Sorry, back to you, Jerry.
That's all right. But anyway, so I was concerned because any possibility of causing what they call dysbiosis, that's the medical term for a poorly balanced microbiome. I said, well, I'm cutting out sucralose. Even though these were animal studies. Now, half of me says, now wait a minute, hold on a second. Only 50% of animal studies are applicable to humans. Like I said, like for example, the substances that cause cancer in animals very often have no effect on humans and blah, blah, blah. So I was a little hesitant, but I was so concerned about the microbiome that I immediately cut out sucralose. Well, it turns out since then, there have been about 2 or 3, maybe more. I haven't really followed it that closely. There's at least 2 or 3 human studies that have examined the effect of sucralose. Now, the first study was up in the air. In other words, they weren't sure. In other words, it was inconclusive whether sucralose damaged the microbiome. The second study found no effect, and the third study, again, inconclusive. So as it stands now, the effects of sucralose, you can say, are inconclusive. It may or may not cause problems with the microbiome. However, somebody who's concerned about the health of the microbiome, my suggestion, I think you'll agree with this, would be to try and avoid sucralose until, let's say, the final papers are in where we know for sure that it's safe to eat. So that's where I stand.
It's real easy fix. Just when in doubt, just don't have it. Real easy fix.
Exactly.
But how about aspartame with the microbiome? Any thoughts?
Aspartame, as far as I know, it doesn't have much effect on the microbiome, but aspartame has other problems. As I said, you have the phenylalanine effect, where some people will get side effect. I used to rule out people who claim, because you have to understand, aspartame has been very heavily studied. There's hundreds of papers on it. Every health organization in the world, the equivalent of the FDA in every country in the world, has really studied aspartame, and they've all concluded that it really has virtually no side effects, and it's safe for use. But there's a caveat to all of this. There was a doctor for a couple of years who came out with a study. He wrote a book about it. I can't remember his name. He wrote a whole book about how dangerous aspartame was, based on rodent studies, which showed that it caused brain tumors. And this went all over the internet. This is the early days of all over the, and it scared the hell out of everybody, thought it was going to cause brain tumors, right? Well, it turns out that was false. Again, it was based on rodent studies, and maybe in rodents it does cause, but there's no evidence it does in humans. However, they just came out coincidentally with a new study, again, a rodent study. This is just recently, where it showed the amount of aspartame, not massive amounts. You have to understand, when you're talking about sweeteners, whether non-nutritive, artificial, or natural, again, the old Paracelsus axiom holds: only the dose determines the poison. In other words, the more you take of anything, the more dangerous and possibly toxic it be. And that holds true for anything. But it turns out that they gave mice the amount of aspartame that would be consumed by the average human in the course of a day. Turns out that a lot of the mice got anxiety from it. They got severe anxiety from, and this surprised the researchers. They didn't expect this. So this is brand new research. Again, they don't know whether this happens in humans, but it might be that some humans who claim to eat foods or beverages that contain aspartame, when they say that it causes adverse mood changes, they're probably telling the truth. I mean, and I tried to figure out why. I mean, why would two amino acids, aspartic acid and phenylalanine, forget the wood alcohol stuff, the method. This, I mean, that's broken down. It's so the amount in aspartame is so tiny that it's negligible. We could rule that out. I tried to say, well, and then I thought about phenylalanine being the precursor for tyrosine, which is the precursor for the catecholamine hormones, the neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine and norepinephrine and epinephrine. Now these are called fight or flight hormones,
You
and
know, you know what I'm thinking? I'm sorry, just
uh,
to cut. Just as you're saying this, I'm thinking that it had probably accelerated their heart rate and changed their breathing patterns, which
yeah,
increasing anxiety. Sorry, but that's what I was thinking.
say again.
That it increased their heart rate and changed their breathing patterns, resulting in anxiety.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah, in other words, I agree with you. I'm thinking that maybe the phenylalanine component might have, some people are more sensitive than others. Well, they don't show this. I mean, this is rodents, but let's say it did happen in humans. Some people might be, let's say they're one gene, they have the one gene for PKU. That's going to make them more sensitive to phenylalanine. These people, when they take even normal doses of aspartame, might actually get some of these, let's say, anxiety problems and mood changes. It's probably real. So, I guess the bottom line is, even though aspartame, and I should also point out that there's been a 22 years observational study. And again, this is an observational study. There's no cause and effect attached to it. They did show that people who tend to use greater amounts of aspartame over a 22-year period do have a tendency for greater rates of cancer. But the problem with that was it's an observational study. There's no cause and effect. They weren't able to show a direct relationship. But that's something to keep in mind. But again, it all boils down to, if you're going to use aspartame and you don't have these personality problems with it, keep it to a minimum. Don't shovel it down like it's completely innocuous, because none of these things are innocuous, even the natural sweeteners. I have a lot of research on stevia. That's my favorite sweetener. Now, stevia is interesting stuff because it's natural. And stevia, the reason I'm going to write about it, it has a whole shitload of health benefits. I mean, besides being a sweetener.
Could
But
you give it like a short list, just real quick? Just I'm curious, a short list of the health benefits.
Uh, I'd have to think about that. I haven't looked at the research in a couple
Oh,
of weeks.
I was curious. I was just curious if you could off the top of your head. No worries. So
Yeah,
Stevie, how much would you recommend? Just curious because I know we're going to get this question. What is a safe, okay, average consumption amount of stevia to consume on a daily basis, in your opinion?
uh, that's a good question. You know, I'm not sure the exact amount.
Just
Uh,
just give a range. You know what I mean? Like less than 100 cans of Coke. You know what I mean? Like give a some kind of a silly ballpark.
oh, well, if you use the envelopes, uh, maybe 3 or 4 envelopes a day would be safe for that. If you use the powder, maybe 2 teaspoons maximum. something like that.
But that's
It's
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
it's 400 times sweeter than table sugar. So you shouldn't have to eat a lot. Now you asked for the benefits. It turns out stevia can actually help you control your blood sugar in the short term, not the long term. They did a study with people with the type 2 diabetes. They took 1,000 milligrams of stevia extract. The active ingredient is something called riboside A, and it improved the insulin to glucose ratio by 40%. So that's off the top of my head. It actually seems to help. Also, you mentioned blood pressure. Chinese studies show that stevia seems to be able to lower blood pressure. So
That's why I wanted to do it. This one, as a matter of fact, because they kind of correlate. Well, hopefully
yeah,
we'll get to that in just a second.
yeah. Now, the stevia usually is well tolerated, but again, if you take too much, it can cause side effects, abdominal fullness, you get headache, dizziness, and nausea. Very rare, but it's possible. It doesn't cause any type of tumors, or it's not carcinogenic. You asked for the amount that's safe.
Yeah.
According to the present studies, 4 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, which comes to about 273 milligrams a day for a 150-pound adult. I don't know exactly how much is in the envelopes. You'd have to check. I'm not sure of that. But my big problem with stevia is that in gathering the research for this forthcoming article, I came across a study that showed that stevia can again adversely affect the gut microbiome. And
Just about to ask that.
this freaked me out because, as I said, I'm very conscious of the microbiome, and stevia is that's my sweetener of choice. That's what I use in my coffee. I said, "Holy cow, am I screwing myself up?" Well, it turns out that the studies involve in vitro test tube studies and animal studies. The further follow-up studies showed either no effect or actually a beneficial effect on the gut microbiome. So stevia is nothing to worry about.
Why would it be beneficial, hypothetically? I can't even figure that one.
Because certain bacteria, like bacteria, they have all these different types of strains of bacteria down there in the gut, and some bacteria favor certain substances. It's like food for them. Certain
Yeah,
bacteria will actually thrive on stevia. In other words, they replicate faster. It actually almost makes them healthier.
I was
You
just
know,
wondering what it was in stevia that had
huh?
that. Usually they prioritize fiber and things like that for their diet.
Fiber is better than any sweetener. Fiber is
Oh yeah, or is
you
that
know,
what's in the stevia though? I'm curious.
yeah, yeah. Fiber is by far the most important, let's say, nutritional component to keeping your biome healthy, because especially what they call the soluble fiber. There's two kinds: insoluble, soluble. The soluble fiber can't be broken down by humans, but it can be broken down by the bacteria into what they call short chain fatty acids. There's main ones: acetate, propionic acid, and butyrate. Butyrate of the three is amazing stuff. In fact, I was surprised to see they're actually online. I came across they're actually selling butyrate supplements now. That surprised me.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they're selling. It's very expensive too. That's like $60 a bottle for 60 of them. It's fixed, but you don't have to buy that, because if you take insoluble fiber, the bacteria there will turn them into short chain fat. Short chain fatty acids help you. They control your appetite. They help you. They protect your cardiovascular system. And butyrate has a property that's almost amazing to think about. A lot of people who get a colonoscopy, including myself, they have what they call precancerous cells in the colon. They're called polyps. Some people have a genetic disease called familial polyposis, where they have like hundreds of these things. These people almost always get colon cancer because these polyps are precancerous tumors. Then right now they're benign, but they can turn into malignant tumors. See, now let's say you have a couple of polyps, right? It turns out that butyrate, don't ask me how it does this, butyrate will convert the precancerous cells in the colon back to normal cells. Now that's freakishly amazing to me. That is amazing. All right. I'm going to tell you, it's been animal studies. They haven't shown in humans.
But still,
I
I mean,
mean,
I would still recommend someone try that. Absolutely.
especially somebody who has let's say, relatives who had colon
Yes.
cancer.
I've literally had clients I'm gonna call after this podcast to tell that to, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, tell them to take in the fiber. Remember, soluble fiber. That's like stuff in beans and oatmeal. That type of guar gum is a soluble.
Intake quite a bit, yeah.
Take your intake quite a bit, and if they haven't taken fiber before or eaten start out, especially if these fiber supplements.
They
If
work
they
with me, of course they have.
okay, but fiber supplement. I just want to quickly add, just in case people might want to know this. If you decide to take fiber supplements, which I do, by the way, you should always want to start off slow because if you take, remember, these things are fermented in the body, and when you get a fermentation, you get gas.
Mhm.
So if you take too much fiber and you're not used to it, you're going to get really bloated and you're going to get really horrible flatulence. So start off easy. I've been doing this. Exactly. I remember I've been doing this for like 25, 30 years. I can take a lot more fiber than most people without having any problems. So,
If you guys don't like pills, by the way, a little recommendation I'd like to give you is microwave popcorn. There's quite a few low-calorie versions. Popcorn's
yeah,
very fiber. It's very low in calories. It's good carbohydrate. Food for thought. If you don't want to take pills, just have that before bed. Easy on
right.
the liver, guys. Take it easy. So
Yeah,
what do you think about myth busting for this one? I don't want to call it a myth buster. The artificial sweeteners are bad. I think it's a nuanced topic. I think we would say the artificial sweeteners are good, provided you don't overdose on them. I guess
right. Exactly.
you should prefer stevia is your preference, I would say, as well as mine. And
Exactly.
same
Monk,
thing, don't eat too
monk
much
fruit. If you
monk.
don't like, there's one problem with stevia is, and a lot of people who I've suggested stevia to have come back and told me, "Hey Jerry, I can't handle this stuff." I said, "Why?" They say, "It tastes terrible." That's what and I couldn't understand what they mean. But then I found out when you take large amounts of stevia, it actually starts to impart a bitter taste.
Oh, they're not being mindful of what they're tasting, that's all.
Yeah, in other words, so you got to be careful of that. Another thing to realize about stevia is that most of the commercial products, like you buy in the supermarket, it'll say stevia on there, right? It's actually very rarely, it's never stevia alone. It's almost always combined with a sugar alcohol called erythritol. In fact, it's mostly erythritol, but they don't, they make it believe that you're getting pure stevia, but it's actually mostly erythritol. Now, I don't know if you follow the news. Erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol, it's classified,
Mhm.
made the news recently because a study came out suggesting that erythritol can cause blood clots,
Yep,
internal blood clots,
I read that
which
one.
which in turn are a risk factor for heart attacks and strokes. And it freaked out all these people. And I mean, everyone started, because erythritol is a very popular sweetener. Like I say, almost all the stevia products are mostly erythritol. It's a very popular sweetener. But it turns out that study was extremely flawed. It would take a long time to explain why, but
Oh,
uh,
I read it and I already dug into it, as a matter of fact. Yeah, you're right.
right, and also people fail to realize that the researchers who conducted the study did not measure the erythritol that was already in the people's body. Your body naturally produces erythritol, and it wasn't even measured. It was a terrible study, and it doesn't prove anything about erythritol.
I mean,
As far
no part of that was measured accurately, in my opinion.
nothing, it was
I
a
got
terrible study.
yeah.
But it's not that sweet. It's only the reason why they combine stevia with erythritol because erythritol itself is it's not as sweet as sugar. It's not a great sweetener, but it has very few calories. So I'm not sure. I don't know whether it's to make more money. I don't know what the motivation of these people who sell stevia is. Why they throw in the erythritol, I couldn't tell you. But it's basically a nerd. It's not going to do anything. It's nothing to. I mean, I looked at that study when I first heard it before reading it. I was ready to throw out my stevia because I know my stevia is mostly. I said, "Fuck this! I'm not going to take this stuff." But then when I actually read the study, which luckily was free, I went online and studied it. I said, "This is bullshit. I'm
I,
not
I
going to stop using this stuff."
I had to get sent to me by a friend of mine who's in the field, and she's literally like, I need you to check this out. What do you think about it? And I said, well, I'm doing a podcast with Jerry. We'll get into it. And I
Yeah,
read it. And as soon as I read it, I think I had the same kind of oh shit, I can't have any artificial sweeteners kind of a thing. But then yeah, I didn't really want to, like, I was hoping I was wrong. So of course, like with every study I do, I went and I did well, I mean, you probably know it was the Carl Sagan baloney test.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But I apply that kind of stuff to the studies. I check the sourcing, where it was from, how it was actually conducted, and the same problem with I have with most fitness studies is they don't actually measure things. So most
Yeah,
fitness studies don't take biomechanics into account, for example. They don't take
yeah.
momentum. They don't take trained individual. You know already.
Well, there's another aspect to consider, and I almost hesitate to mention this because it makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist. But you have to understand the sugar lobby. In other words, these people that represent the sugar industry is massive. They have a massive amount of money, and they have these guys that pay off congressmen and senators in Washington, this and that. But they are behind a lot of the bad stuff you hear about these various sweeteners
Mhm.
are actually planted by shills paid off by the sugar lobby. So you got to be careful of that. If people really want to know the truth, they're going to have to educate themselves a little and not take things on face value. Now, I know you do that. I do that. People don't have to be hardcore researchers, but don't take any of this shit on face value. When somebody says to you, well, aspartame or erythritol is going to kill you, look into it before because there's stuff behind it where they want you to stop using these sweeteners and start to load up on sugar, which will, without question, screw you up.
Mhm.
That eating a lot of sugar is going to make people fat, and it's going to cause all kinds of cardiovascular disease, all kinds of problems. Sugar's far Massive amounts of sugar are much worse than any artificial sweetener.
Well, I'll tell you, Jerry, we're actually going to wrap up here for the night. Let's try to get high blood pressure done. I got a couple other topics you're going to like fluoride, as a matter of fact, next week too. So let's try
Okay.
to get that next week if you can. If you're able to, can you do your usual thing and plug yourself, guys? I know you've already heard this before, but please, if you haven't already, please check out Jerry's stuff he's about to tell you to right now. You can keep it short. Everybody's watched this, seen all of it up before. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, you talking about my applied metabolics?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, I have applied metabolics publication. It's a digital publication. It's been around 8 years, 30 to 50 pages every month. I cover a very wide range of topics: nutrition, supplement science, hormonal therapy, anti-aging research, ergogenic aids, women's health and fitness. I cover more topics than any other digital publication. A lot of it, most of it, all of it is based on my over 6 decades of study and actual practical experience, which I don't think anyone can match as far as I know.
Real quick, I want to interrupt there just real quick. Two things, guys, just so everybody knows. I mean, you guys have all heard Jerry before. You guys know where to find him. But again, it is just the cost of a cup of coffee per month. It's completely worth it. I wanted to see, but seriously, please, Jerry, if you can keep this 5 minute answer, just think about it. Give me a 5 minute answer on this. What are your thoughts on the new AI generated articles that are taking over the world and the internet? People aren't even writing their actual articles anymore. They're doing zero research. They're just plugging in what they want written into an AI generator, writing it, posting it on the internet.
I haven't looked into that at all, so I have no opinion on it.
Oh, please do. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I'm frankly disgusted.
I wonder how. I mean, have you read any of these articles?
I
I
have
mean,
read quite a few, and they're I mean, at first glance, difficult to distinguish from an actual
mhm,
article. So some of them are, I don't even want to call them forgeries because the information is so accurate. So long story short, I tried one. I think it was called Jasper the other
mhm,
day just to see what I could do and if I could actually get it to write a useful anything useful. I tried it on a running topic I was doing. I just wanted to see if it would come up with useful running information, but in response to breathing training, the latest science. So
mhm.
I tried it, and it was something I could very easily see like a journalist using without any question whatsoever. All of it sounded 100% believable. It wasn't. It wasn't, by the way. All of it sounded 100% believable. It all looked plausible. It all chained together nicely. There was 4 or 5 pieces you would have to reword and correct, but most of the information was actually pretty good. I would say about 30% of it was just wildly inaccurate, made up bullshit. But it was surprising to me. It really was, especially considering I had no knowledge of how to use it, and I only fiddled with it for about 2 hours, and I got those kind of results. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
well, let me ask you. You still have to have a human to feed the information into it. In other words,
Yeah,
you
but we're
can't,
talking minimal feeding. Minimal. We're talking word.
so in other words, you're saying if I understand, if I let's say put in the topic allulose, one of the sugars, right? You know,
How it affects the human body in response to exercise allulose.
it'll give me a whole article on that.
It'll give you a whole article on it. You'll have to tweak it and fine tune it after it spits it out. But
Right.
it will. And you can go ahead and check out the like, well, you can't source it, but you can check out the information in the article by Googling what it says, and most of it will actually be accurate and cited. It's
Mhm.
pretty crazy. Again, though, the issue is that I literally did it with the intention of seeing what I could do, completed it, took a look at the thing, broke it down. Like I said, roughly 30% of it was complete nonsense, but it sounded entirely if I didn't know better, it sounded entirely plausible. Things about breathing patterns and the way the humans are supposed to breathe and stuff, I know better. But it was saying, like, let's say general knowledge, which is wildly wrong. They're very inaccurate. But you get what I'm saying. This is a worrisome topic. I mean, I thought you were digging into AI by now. You should dig into AI a little.
Yeah, but you know what? You could say the same thing about most YouTube videos. I mean, if you don't have a scientific background and you click on one of these YouTube videos, the person throws a couple of technical terms and people believe they know what they're talking about. But somebody with a background like me, when I look at this stuff, I just laugh. It's just complete freaking bullshit.
Well, I suppose the difference is that nowadays people are using it to write news scripts, articles, and everything else, and they're literally doing it in the span of, say, half an hour, as opposed
Wow.
to months and weeks of doing it.
Wow. I'm wondering though about the quality of that writing, though. I mean,
Not bad, Gary. I'm serious. You should try it. Not that bad. I'm never going to use it. How the hell am I supposed to learn something? Jesus Christ. Most of the reason
Yeah.
I do my research is to learn shit.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah,
I learned something every time I research. I'm still doing that's one of the joys of doing this. I
yeah,
mean,
that's why I love doing it.
I'll be honest with you. I'll be frank with you. I would be afraid to use that. I would never use that for my
I mean,
applied-
don't. You should see so you get comfortable and you can recognize inconsistency when you see these kinds of writings, because you'll recognize the inconsistency. You have to get an eye for it, I think. That's another one of the reasons I wanted to do it. You'll start seeing this bullshit everywhere, people posting it like they wrote it.
Yeah.
There's
But
no
you see,
chance of plagiarism.
see the reason, another reason why that it would be not suitable for me to use, let's say in my publication, is because a lot of what I write is based on my personal experience and knowledge, which no AI could ever duplicate.
Of course.
So that stuff, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, if I wanted to use it for some other purpose, maybe, but I would never use it as for my because it's basically useless.
No, but I mean, just again, but you got to remember, this is applicable across every single known domain.
Okay.
I'm just asking your opinion on it. I don't think in our field it's not going to be able to be used. At
Right.
least in the scientific field, it won't be able to be used. Well, I should say yet. I should always say yet. Yet.
Well, what about the grammar and spelling and all that? Is it do you have to go over that?
Better than mine.
Huh?
Better than mine.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, it's better than mine, and mine isn't the best, but it's better than mine.
Yeah. You know,
But anyways, let's wrap it up for the day,
Okay.
Jerry.
I'll look into it. Maybe next
I'll
time
send you stuff. I'll
next
send
time I talk to you, I'll give you my opinion of it. I mean, I heard about it. It sounded interesting, but I just don't like the idea of some artificial intelligence writing my stuff. It doesn't sit well with me. I guess I'm old school,
For me, it's one of those things. It's always better the enemy you know. In my case, and I
Right.
want to know what I'm going to be dealing with and what I'm going to be up against. Same reason I know about hackers and how they operate. I'm not one. I don't want to be one, but I want
Yeah.
to protect myself. Common sense stuff. I don't want to be in fights, but I'm trained in self-defense, just in case.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes
Well,
sense.
it's like the Boy Scout motto: be prepared.
Yes, always be prepared. I train so hard that life is easy. That's the old goal, anyways.
Right.
But anyways, Gary, as always, thank you so much. It's hard to have you back on next week. I'll shoot you an email or something about maybe doing this next week. Talk about high blood pressure and fluoride. I think I mentioned. Try to do those.
All right. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much, bud.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Later.
Every little bit counts. Don't forget, get your finger exercise in and help me out at the same time. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.